The family of Pedro Ugboma, who died in what a lawyer calls suspicious circumstances following an elective fibroid operation in April, are demanding accountability from Premier Specialist Medical Center. At a press conference in Lagos, alongside their lawyers, the Ugboma family have laid out their initial plans to get answers to their questions over negligence and malpractice. And the rights correspondent Adefemi Akinsanya tells us more.
For the family of Peju Ugboma, who died following an elective fibroid surgery in April, the journey to justice has begun. At the offices of Alisa Agbakoba Legal in Ikoyi, her widower, Ugboma, made his first public appearance, and in it, he set the record straight about his wife's health condition before she entered Premier Medical Specialist Center.
I'll say categorically, and with records from several hospitals, my wife had no pre-existing condition. But nonetheless, if she had a pre-existing condition, even if she were hypertensive, the doctors ran sufficient tests on her before the surgery for them to have made a good decision, especially with the fact that the surgery was elective. If she was too hypertensive to operate on, they should have left her. Absolutely. Yeah, because it wasn't a life on. If my wife hadn't gone in for that surgery, I'm sure she would have probably been home baking right now. Yes.
Emotions were high, with Peju's loved ones laying blame for her death squarely at the feet of the involved doctors at Premier.
She wasn't given a fighting chance. She complained of her tummy aching. She complained of pains, and she was ignored. The surgeon was not there. How do you do such a surgery and you take a walk? It's because you're being mean. Arrogant. And you're not thinking about how that patient feels. And for you, it is just business as usual. But guess what? Someone's life is not just business as usual. So you have to pay for it. You will pay with everything you have. You will pay with your license. You don't have the right to even cut a human being again. You don't. And honestly, justice must be served. The doctors must be punished. They cannot go scot-free.
At this point, the family says there's one form of compensation they're interested in.
If Premier can resurrect her, that's the only compensation. That's the only compensation. The point has been made that this is not about money. It's about setting aright the decrepit healthcare process and system, not just in Premier, but in Nigeria.
The legal team plans to do that with requests for an inquest, investigations and inspections.
We've petitioned the Nigerian Medical Association. We've also petitioned the Nigerian Medical and Dental Disciplinary Council of Nigeria. Obviously, we want them to investigate. We've also petitioned the Attorney General of Lagos State. We've also written to the Executive Secretary of the Lagos State Facilities and Monitoring Accreditation Agency. That's the agency that gives hospitals its license to operate. So we're requesting that they investigate and temporarily close the hospital pending the investigation, the outcomes of the investigation. We've also sent a petition to the Consumer Protection Council, because at the end of the day, we're still consumers of the medical business, as it were. And we've also written to the Lagos State House of Assembly, asking for a public hearing to basically talk about the health reforms for Lagos State. And of course, in her honor, we're titling that the Peju Ugboma Health Reform Initiative.
Ugboma says he's in this for the long run.
I think there's always a turning point. If you drive it hard enough, there's always a turning point. Because a lot of people have walked the road I'm walking now, and they decided to turn back halfway. So, I mean, let's test the process.
No, we are not going to stop this thing halfway. The only thing is that we will need the support of Nigerians as a whole. It's not just me, it's not just you. Let us do the proper thing. So tomorrow, we'll be confident. Some of us who are married, we know what we go through when our wives have to go for very simple medical procedures.
And as for Premier itself, the lawyers say there are many causes for concern.
In the course of the preparation, they would notice that she's a red blood type. Now, the type of operation that she went for is usually associated with a lot of loss of blood. Why didn't they have a blood bank? It beggars belief that they didn't have blood on standby. It was only when things became bad that they had to tell the husband, go get blood. They didn't have a CT scan. They didn't even have an ultrasound scan. If you're cutting somebody, abdominal cut, it presupposes that something might go wrong and you need to go right back in. Now, to understand what's going on, you've got to do an ultrasound scan. Post-op requirements require that the surgeon would pay a patient visit. There was none. So, on the basis of all of what I have seen and read, and on the report of Evercare that ends with, I can send you a copy if you want, that ends with the word, "This is a case fit for the coroner." That is an indictment.
In between the legal arguments, discussions over medical negligence, and calls for reform, there's a husband who just wants his wife back. Unable to get that, he says he'll settle for justice. Adefemi Akinsanya, Arise News, Lagos.
And for more on Peju Ugboma's update, Arise correspondent Adefemi Akinsanya is in the studio and joins us now. It's good to have you.
Good to be here.
Yeah. So what more can you tell us? We can see clearly that the Ugboma family have chosen to take legal action against. Do they know the specific areas of negligence they're going to be attacking them on? I hate to use the word attack, but...
It's fitting. At this point, what they've done through the power of their legal team is set out a whole list of requests for information, requests for investigations, requests for inspections, and they've also done that through sending out a series of petitions, some to regulatory bodies, some to medical councils, to the consumer protection councils as well, and then also to the Lagos State House of Assembly in terms of institutional reform. They're trying to push for a new health policy that would help people or help medical practitioners become a lot more accountable for the work that they do. And it is fitting, in the report at the press conference, there were so many questions directed to the Ugboma family about compensation financially, and the husband declined every question. That's not what he has any type of plan for. He doesn't want to pass any comment on it. What they do want is, first and foremost, accountability, and accountability can look like a lot of things to different people. And as you heard, one of Pedro Ugboma's friends there in a very emotional display say that you'll pay for with everything. You'll pay with your medical license, and you won't have the right to do this again. So at this point, what they've done is, again, sent out those petitions, and I think the most important part of it is waiting on the coroner's report, and then that would be able to have a formal basis of what the situation is, because as it stands now, it's just suspicions and allegations of negligence and malpractice. And if the coroner's report confirms that, which the legal team is confident it will, then that allows them to pursue other areas of interest. In addition to that, there's also a petition that they filed with the criminal court in terms of criminal case, in terms of murder. And again, asking them about whether or not they think that this case meets the burden of proof. It's still very premature to say, but as it stands, this is them organizing themselves and looking for accountability, but most importantly, institutional change in the healthcare sector, so that no other family would have to go without a mother or a wife or a daughter or a sister or anybody.
Indeed. So that is what justice means for the Ugboma family. But Femi, from the time you brought the story to us and now this update, have there been any new revelations to you as the reporter who is covering it and who is monitoring the entire process?
At this point, we know that Evercare Hospital in Lekki was where Peju was actually pronounced dead. She had left Premier and was taken to Lekki to Evercare, and it was there, as I said, they made efforts to resuscitate her. What's very telling is that Evercare's report on her death ends with the line, "This is a case for the coroner," which implies that they believe that there could be some sort of malpractice or negligence involved in this, which I think is quite telling. And the legal team also agreed to that fact that, as Mr. Agbakoba said, it sounds like an indictment. It sounds as though Evercare put their hands up to say, we noticed that this wasn't handled correctly, and we're going to put this to the independent body who is going to be the overarching authority in determining whether or not this was a case of negligence and malpractice, and then henceforth the legal team will be able to take the necessary actions. One thing I've also experienced throughout the covering of this story is so many people's stories and sadly, they've all been negative when it comes to recent conversations I've had with people with their experience with Premier Specialist Hospital. And it's across a whole body of different health issues or health diseases. And it is sad, as it stands, that, you know, this has been the experience of so many people. You know, with this story, because it is so sad and because we gravitate to it emotionally, you have to make sure you try and make these reports as balanced as possible, because as it stands, we don't have any definitive proof either or to say without doubt that there was negligence. All we have are, you know, a series of facts, and then we have all of these different regulatory bodies whose decision it is that we'll go for. But it does seem as though many people have had negative experiences with Premier Specialist Medical Center, and those experiences have resulted in deaths that many of these families have deemed to be unnecessary, and that is a shame. And if that is the case, again, it's for all of these different regulatory bodies and councils and, you know, laws to make sure that those cases and people's safeties can continue to be remedied correctly.
Yes, indeed. And even though it's at Premier Medical, they're looking at the bigger picture of the Nigerian medical practice. Let's see where this goes. Thank you for monitoring the developments for us, Femi.